Hi, I'm Dr. Anna Saylor with Every Family Chiropractic Center located in Royal Oak, Michigan. And today we're going to talk about essential oils. And with me, we have Dr. Marissa Heisel from Hanover, Ontario. And she is going to really talk to us more about what an essential oil is and what we can do with it.
Hello, Dr. Saylor. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous.
Great.
So tell me a little bit more about what an essential oil is.
So essential oils are actually oil sacs that are found on each and every plant. And they're the plant's own internal medicine. They're what provide the plants with the protective benefits that they need. And you can take a plant and extract those oils through very specific means and utilize them for different purposes for human health. We can use them as well for animals, but specifically today we'll be talking about using them for therapeutic benefits. You know, most of the time people are used to essential oils for aromatherapy. They smell nice. And they do. They smell beautiful in our homes and in our offices. We can use them as fragrance. That was my own personal experience with them. I have a lot of background with homeopathy and with herbalism, and really just thought of essential oils as something that I can wear or that I can use in my home, until I was introduced to a line of essential oils that are what we need them to be therapeutic. We need them to be pure, and we need them to be potent. And as soon as they're that, they start to take on a class of what I call botanical medicine. They're essentially plant medicine that we can use for our own physical and emotional health and well-being.
Emotional too?
Emotional too.
Okay.
So every oil can be used for both a physical purpose, a therapeutic purpose, as well as an emotional purpose. So they'll have different characteristics. They might be uplifting, they might be calming or sedating, they can be used for depression and anxiety, and the different oils each have a different chemical makeup, a chemical constituent, and every plant will have a different purpose. So we can use them singly as an individual oil, or we can blend them together in order to produce a specific effect that we might be looking for.
Okay. Tell me a little bit, how do you know it's a pure oil?
So you want to work with an oil company that's sourcing very specifically. And the oils that are most beneficial are ones that will be sourced from different areas of the world that are known for those specific plants. So lavender is grown all over the world, but perhaps the most potent lavender will come from the south of France. Jasmine that's grown in southern India will be much more pure and much more potent than something that might be farmed more locally. So you want to look at the specific plant that you're looking for, the therapeutic benefit that you're looking for, and then look at different areas of the world that both grow those plants, grow them organically without any sort of genetic modification, and source them and harvest them at specific times.
Okay. And I know the bottle's really important. So tell me a little bit about a bottle, and I'll grab a bottle right here. So tell me a little bit about this bottle itself.
So with an essential oil, what's most beneficial would be to make sure that you're using an amber-colored bottle, like the one that you're holding in your hand,
okay,
so that if it's outside or if it's exposed to sunlight, it's still protected to some extent. You know, the essential oils, if they're pure, if there are no solvents, no fillers, no pesticides, no chemicals, as they should be, they don't expire. They might, over years' time, become a little less potent, but they don't actually expire, and they don't become rancid when they're in an amber-colored bottle.
Okay. And glass is very important.
Glass is absolutely important because the oils are so potent that they can actually start to eat away at plastic, okay, which A, you end up with a big mess, and B, you end up with plastic particles, plastic chemicals in our oils.
Okay. Which we don't want, right?
Which we don't want. You know, I was asked to give a talk about a year ago to a high school conference. And the talk, I called it Garbage In and Garbage Out. It was really about toxins in our environment. And the research that I did suggested that there are 80,000 different chemicals in use in manufacturing processes these days. 3,000 of them have been studied for human health and safety.
Okay, so 80,000.
80,000, and 3,000 of them have been studied. That means 77,000 chemicals that are in use every day that go into our clothing, that go into our cleaning products, that go into our skincare products, the toys that our children play with. And we have no idea what they actually do in terms of our health.
So we were just asked a question about baby oil and the application of baby oil versus something more natural. So tell me a little bit about that.
So if you want to put something on your skin, the skin is the largest organ in the body, and anything that you put on it is going to get into the skin and into the bloodstream quite quickly. And so you want to look for something that is as clean and pure as possible. Baby oil is a compound of a number of different things, most of which are chemical, including petroleum. You put that on your skin, or even worse, on your baby's skin, and we start to see toxic accumulation. You potentially start to see hormone disruption. We know that children are hitting puberty at earlier and earlier ages these days. That's not natural. It might be what's commonly occurring these days, but it's not natural in human health. And so whatever you put on your skin, you want to be as pure as possible. And generally, I'll suggest just a pure food oil even. So olive oil is one. Coconut oil is brilliant because it has its own antimicrobial, antibacterial, and antiviral properties. But wheat germ oil is great, almond oil is great. You just want to make sure that you're not using something that's been synthetically modified or that's a compound of different synthetics.
Okay. So you're talking about just actually applying coconut oil directly to your skin?
You can.
Okay.
You know, coconut oil is fatty, but as soon as you hold it in your hand, it starts to melt. It melts to our body heat, and you can apply it. And it soaks into our skin really quite nicely.
Once again, I'm Dr. Anna Saylor, and we're talking about essential oils today. And we're going to take some questions from the audience.
With all the popularity of essential oils, is there a concern of depleting the world's supply of it?
So one of the things you want to think about with any oil company that you're working with is what their commitment to the sustainability of the environment might be. And the company that you work with is one that should be one that's looking at how easy it is to grow those plants, what the turnover might be, and what the production needs are. For example, with something like jasmine, jasmine's a beautiful smelling flower. It's a beautiful oil. But in order to source jasmine in its most pure form, it takes about 35,000 flowers to produce one small 5 milliliter bottle. And a 5 milliliter bottle would be something this size. So it takes about 5 hours of picking and 35,000 petals. That's not something that can be done year-round in order to sustain the health of that plant. And so, for example, with something like jasmine, it might only be available at certain times of the year or in very small quantities. And that's the mark of a company that's really responsible to the environment and to the sustainability of the environment of those plants. Certainly, it would be absolutely possible to overproduce, to over-process, and to not have enough of that plant left for growing. Some companies do have farms that are local, and they produce all of their oils from those farms. But if you're looking at areas of the world where those plants are most potent, you want to make sure that as they're processed and as they're harvested, that there's enough left to harvest for the next period.
And tell me a little bit more. We're talking about therapeutic grades.
Mm-hmm.
So give me some information on that.
So again, you want to do a couple of things when you're talking about using an oil therapeutically. You want to make sure where you're sourcing from. Again, you want it to be organic. You want it to be sustainable. You want to make sure that the plants themselves haven't been modified in any way, that there aren't any pesticides being sprayed on those plants. When they're processed, you want to make sure that they're harvested and processed at an appropriate temperature. So as soon as you heat an oil, you destroy its therapeutic properties. You're left with nothing but scent, which is lovely if you're just looking for a fragrance. But if you're looking for something that has a therapeutic benefit, you want to make sure that it's being steam distilled at an appropriate temperature. And so once all of that is done, what you also want to make sure is that those oils are being tested.
Okay.
And these particular oils that we're working with are tested at independent PhD-run labs looking for all of those different fillers and toxins and chemicals. So that when they say that they're certified pure therapeutic grade, you can actually be sure of that they're beyond organic and that they can be used in different applications for health.
Okay, so let's talk about the applications, because we all know that they smell lovely,
right,
and we can put them on our skin,
right,
but we can also ingest many of them.
So
let's talk about that a little bit.
So there are three different primary ways that the oils can be used. The first one is actually aromatic, and so you can diffuse them in the air, and we have a diffuser going just beside you. Diffusing oils into the air does a couple of things. It cleanses the air of pathogens, of bacteria and viruses, of fungus that might be growing. It also helps with anything respiratory. So especially right now in cold and flu season, doing something by diffusing oils aromatically will actually help with respiratory infections, with head colds, with chest infections. So that can be very useful. The other thing that I love about aromatic uses of the oils is that as soon as something goes through our sense of smell, it's called the olfactory sense, it goes into an area of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is directly responsible for emotion and for memory. So if you think about walking in somewhere and smelling a smell that reminds you of grandma's apple pie, even years after grandma might be gone. It's that connection between smell and memory and emotion. And so if we're struggling with something emotionally, if we need uplifting, if we're struggling with depression or anxiety, the essential oils, because they're therapeutic grade, as soon as they're inhaled aromatically, will start to shift those emotions and can do it really quite rapidly. So that's the first application, aromatic.
And with the diffuser, it's really not heating the oil itself, so you're not breaking down the oil.
No, you're not. You're using a cool mist diffuser. There are these really beautiful soapstone containers that you can use to put a little tea light under, but again, as soon as you light a candle under an oil, all that you're diffusing is the scent, and the therapeutic benefit of that chemical compound becomes destroyed.
So the actual diffuser is very important.
The actual diffuser is very important, the grade of the diffuser and what we're using. And there are different ones. There are ones where you would add water and then a few drops of oil. There are others where you can actually take a bottle and attach it directly to the diffuser, and it's nothing but the oil that's being diffused.
And it smells lovely, and it makes you feel good.
It does, exactly. And so we use it in our office. I know you do as well, so that when people walk in, they might have a calming effect, they might have an uplifting effect if that's what you're looking for, especially later in the afternoon. But what all of the oils have are antiviral and antibacterial properties. And so we're always cleansing the air and purifying the air in our offices, which is really beneficial as well.
So on that note, tell me a little bit. I know we talked about the hospital and the study that was going on.
Right.
Could you tell me a little bit about the hospital study?
So there are a couple of different things that have come out of different hospitals. The one that you're thinking of is a hospital that was called Vanderbilt Hospital, and it was the first hospital in the U.S. that did a pilot project in the emergency room, in the ER, and it was specifically for the benefit of the staff. They found that the staff was often very frustrated and very stressed. Of course, it's an incredibly stressful job.
It's an emergency room.
It's an emergency room. It's an incredibly stressful job. And the staff was sometimes having a really hard time. So they did a pre-study survey of the staff, looking at levels of frustration and stress. And then they brought in diffusers that they scattered around the emergency room. And they were using citrus blends, specifically. They were using lemon oil or wild orange or a citrus blend.
Which are the uplifting
Which
smells.
is uplifting, exactly. They're also highly detoxifying and very beneficial, again, for their antimicrobial properties. And after 6 months, they did a post-study survey, and the level of frustration in staff and stress in the staff had decreased dramatically.
Significant.
It was significant.
Like 80% to 4%.
Right.
Okay.
There are now about 50 hospitals in the U.S. that are diffusing oils in the emergency rooms, and Vanderbilt Hospital is going to direct patient care in their palliative care ward, which means that they're actually going to start diffusing oils for the benefit of patients because they've seen the benefit of that.
Okay. And tell me about the one study with the high school lab.
So it wasn't a study. It was one of the parents took in a blend called a protecting blend, and it's used for boosting immune health. And she took it into her own son's classroom because everyone kept getting sick and her son kept coming home sick. She took it in a diffuser and asked the teacher if the teacher would start diffusing it, and the teacher agreed. And the kids started to really improve quite dramatically and quite quickly until a few days later the teachers were sitting in the staff lounge and the science teacher started complaining how he couldn't grow bacteria on his petri dishes anymore. They couldn't figure it out until they realized that the classroom doors were open.
Okay.
And the oils are actually will waft, and they're called volatile oils, where the properties will diffuse quite a distance away, and was diffusing down the hallway and destroying the bacteria on the petri dishes.
Okay. So if you have a science center, you don't want to diffuse wonderful oils.
No, you don't.
Okay.
You don't.
Okay.
At least if you're trying to grow bacteria or mold.
Okay, so tell me about the second application.
So the second application is topical, and it's something that some of us are familiar with, specifically with lavender oil. We'll put lavender oil on our babies sometimes when we're changing them. Lavender is very calming, very soothing, almost sedating at times. It's brilliant for use for people who are having insomnia or sleep issues. So you can apply oils for those kinds of purposes. You can apply oils for specific healthcare issues. So a really deep cut or wound, you might want to clean out with something like tea tree oil, which is also called melaleuca, and then you can put lavender oil on after that to help with healing. So that's another application. Again, the skin is one of the largest organs in the body, is the largest organ in the body, in fact. And anything that we put on topically will soak right in. In fact, it will get into the bloodstream. And so you can use some of the oils topically even for things like decreasing stress levels. If you apply oils directly over the adrenal glands, you can use oils to help balance cholesterol levels. You can use oils to help kids with focus and concentration and staying on task if that's something that they have difficulty with. So that would be the second application.
Okay.
And some of the oils are a little spicier than others, and you'd want to make sure that you're using some sort of a carrier oil. Again, we talked about some of those, something like a coconut oil, olive oil, almond oil, any of those. Anything that's a pure oil can be used as a carrier oil.
Especially more on children, right?
On small children, yes. You'd almost always want to. You know, lavender is called the least caustic of the oils. That means it's the most gentle on the skin. And you can generally put it on a baby's bottom, certainly on the bottom of their feet, but most of the time I would recommend cutting it with some sort of a carrier oil. And then the third application that we talked about, or that we were mentioning, would be to actually use the oils internally. And you can only do that with oils that you know are pure. You don't want to ingest anything that might have been cut with any sort of chemicals, or where you don't know exactly what's in the bottle.
So if the oil says not for internal use,
then
you know it's not pure.
You know it's not pure. You know it's not pure.
Or it's been cut with something.
Absolutely. And even oils in health food stores, if you go in and you read the side of the bottle, they will say not for internal consumption. And you want to make sure what you're using. You know, oils can be food grade, so you might have a food grade peppermint oil, and you might be able to sprinkle that into your food, but it still might not be something that you take internally for any sort of therapeutic purpose. The oils that we're talking about are ones that can be used internally. You can put some of them into a little bit of water. Some of them are quite spicy, and you'd want to put them into something like a veggie capsule or some sort of an empty capsule that you can then take internally. And doing that would affect changes in things like the digestive tract, cardiovascular health, respiratory health again. So you're looking at them for specific therapeutic purposes.
Definitely more organ-driven.
More organ-driven, certainly, yes. But it would also be for something like immune support. You can use oils that way as well, especially again in cold and flu season. You know, have you heard of an infection called MRSA, MRSA?
Yes.
So MRSA stands for the fancy name of methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. And what that means is that it's an infection that cannot be treated by the drugs that normally you would expect to treat that kind of an illness.
Like an antibiotic?
Like an antibiotic. It derived from hospitals, unfortunately from drug interactions. It was proving quite fatal in immune-compromised populations, and it spread out of the hospitals into our senior homes, again, an immune-compromised population, and is now being found even in community centers and schools. Very hard to treat, and people will end up very ill for a very long time. There's a study that just came out of England within the past couple of months that shows that the most potent way of treating MRSA is using oregano oil. So again, using a plant oil to treat something that modern medicine is having a really challenging time with.
How would they treat it more? Do they do it all three ways then with the study? Did they?
No, they were using it internally.
Internally?
And you can get oregano oil at most health food stores. It's something that you can put directly in water. Sometimes it can be more potent than others, and you'd want to put it into a veggie capsule again. And you'd want to be using it quite frequently. So with an acute situation like that, you would want to be taking oil even every 15 minutes. With something that's more chronic, you can do it once or twice a day.
So tell me a little bit about the applications in your practice, because I use them too in my office. So
we've seen some really amazing things in our office. We work with a young woman in her early 20s who is severely autistic and completely nonverbal, and she started having seizures. And her parents were at a complete loss. The medical system was at a complete loss. They were giving this girl every single anti-seizure medication that they could, and it just wasn't affecting the change they wanted to see. And the parents were beside themselves. They didn't know what to do. And frankincense oil is one of those oils that we say if you don't know what else to use frankincense. But frankincense will actually cross the blood-brain barrier. And one of the things that it's known for is for its anti-seizure purposes. So we recommended that the mother get a bottle of frankincense oil, and we recommended that she put it on the bottom of her daughter's feet, which sounds funny at first until, again, you think about the skin being the largest organ in the body, and the bottom of the feet is the most porous skin in our body. So anything we put on the bottom of our feet is going to soak into the bloodstream quite rapidly. In this girl, the seizures started to decrease within the first day, And over the course of a week, they managed to wean her off of her seizure medication completely.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's amazing.
Using just the frankincense.
Using just frankincense.
I know she was getting chiropractic care.
She
right?
was, and it's been essential for her health over years. But this was something that was beyond us.
The one last piece. Thank you for joining us, and I want to thank our guest, Dr. Marissa Heisel, for joining us too. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you soon.